In the grim theater of war, amidst Kherson's shattered front lines, a shadow of destruction patiently waited. When Russian officers confidently entered a seemingly innocuous building, a critical UAV command post, they were unaware that an unseen eye, Ukraine's LEA-100 UAV, had already mapped their fate. Every movement was tracked, turning their sanctuary into a bullseye. As the doors closed, the countdown began for a swift, brutal aerial assault by two GBU-39s, poised to alter the battlefield in a blinding flash. 11:42 a.m., September 1st, 2025. A group of Russian soldiers stepped into a decaying building, standing desolate on the outskirts of Kherson. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than an abandoned shell, cracked plaster and sagging roof tiles. But hidden behind that facade was a sophisticated covert command post, a critical link in Russia's UAV network on the western bank of the Dnipro River. From makeshift stations like this, Russian forces could direct over 40 Shahad drones to attack Kiev every week, while launching at least 30 Lancets against Ukrainian artillery positions in Kherson and Zaporizhia. To the Russian officers, it was a perfect location, buried inside a residential block, almost impossible to suspect. What they didn't know was that Ukrainian intelligence had already uncovered the site. For days, every emission and every movement inside had been tracked by a LEA-100 UAV, silently transmitting data back to Mykolaiv. The entire layout had been mapped in detail, and today, as the Russian crew walked inside, the countdown to destruction had already begun. Within minutes, a Ukrainian MiG-29S would release two GBU-39 small-diameter bombs, each weighing 250 pounds, precision-guided munitions aimed directly at the heart of that building before a single order could even be sent. The GBU-39 is a dangerous weapon, 6 feet long, 7.5 inches in diameter, weighing 250 pounds. Its folding wings allow it to glide more than 60 miles from the release point. But success required meticulous planning. The pilot would have to fly a demanding low-level ingress. Every waypoint needed precision down to the meter, slipping past K-1 radar and Pantsir S-1 batteries ringing Kherson. A single timing error or deviation could doom the mission. The Ukrainian Air Force was ready. A single MiG-29 had been assigned. No fighter escort. Its only support, the LEA-100 Scout and a pack of mini UAVs acting as decoys, all synchronized to the second. By 11:55 a.m., preparations were complete. Two GBU-39s were locked under the wings, fuses set to instantaneous detonation. No need for deep penetration against a two-story house. For defense, the MiG-29AS carried an SPS-141 jamming pod beneath its fuselage. On its outer pylons hung two R-73 short-range air-to-air missiles, a hedge against Russian fighters or helicopters. Under its inner wings, two 370-gallon drop tanks extended combat range and guaranteed fuel for a high-speed escape. Inside the cockpit, the GPS over INS navigation suite was preloaded with target coordinates, cross-checked against live video from the LEA-100. The bombs would lock onto their aim point with a margin of error under 3 feet. 3 minutes later, both RD-33 engines roared, and the MiG-29 blasted off from its forward strip near Mykolaiv. Once airborne, Captain Milo shoved the stick forward, dropping to just 165 feet, hugging the terrain in nap-of-the-earth flight. At this altitude, even powerful long-range radars were limited by Earth's curvature, leaving them blind beyond a few dozen miles. On the HUD, numbers flickered constantly. Speed 480 knots, altitude steady at 165 feet. A countdown glowed, time to release at 128 minutes and 47 seconds. Meanwhile, from a base along the Dnipro, a swarm of Punisher UAVs lifted off. Above Kherson, the LEA-100 kept circling silently, its camera fixed on the target house. Each second, The feed streamed back to Mykolaiv, cross-verified with the bomb guidance under the MiG-29's wings. 12:06 p.m. The strike package was in motion. On Ukraine's command screens, the display is split into two panes. One showed a UAV video of the building. The other tracked the MiG-29 closing in. The LEA-100's infrared camera zoomed in. The yard antenna trembled in the breeze. A window hung half open. Two Russian soldiers carried a crate of equipment inside. They had no idea every move was being broadcast live to Ukrainian commanders, and that death was now only tens of miles away. At 128 minutes and 45 seconds, with 37 miles to go, the SPO-15 Beryoza radar warning receiver lit up. The needle swung northeast. A sharp alarm blared in the cockpit. Podlet K-1 radar had painted the MiG-29. Milo immediately rolled the fighter into a beam maneuver, flying perpendicular to the radar beam. This tactic made Doppler velocity harder to classify, buying him precious seconds. At the same time, the SPS-141 jamming pod under the fuselage began emitting broadband interference, distorting the radar return. From the southwest, the deception package activated. Punisher UAVs pulsed intermittent signals, their tiny radar cross-sections producing scattered false blips. Other drones climbed higher, leaving visible contrails, forcing Russian radar crews to divide their attention between multiple tracks. Inside the cockpit, the Beryoza screamed relentlessly. Milo yanked the stick, holding the beam. At this angle, Doppler shifts became difficult to read, delaying a firm lock. Meanwhile, the SPS-141 kept flooding the spectrum, degrading the MiG-29's trace into a blur, lost in background clutter. At 129 minutes and 5 seconds, the Beryoza's tone shifted into a continuous, higher-pitched scream, unmistakable. The MiG-29 had been locked by fire control radar. Pantsir S-1 near Kherson was now engaged. A surface-to-air missile launched, ripping upward in a trail of white smoke. Milo had seconds to react. He pulled the stick lightly, bleeding speed down to 450 knots, while stabbing the flare button and deploying the AL-50 decoy. The Pantsir missile hunted the MiG's engine heat, but when it met the flare's infrared bloom, its seeker was deceived. The missile veered off, detonating in the distance. A gray cloud hung in the sky. In the cockpit, the Beryoza fell back to a lower alert. Russia's first intercept had failed. Milo gripped the stick tighter. He knew the decisive moment was next, the pop-up maneuver to release the bombs. At 129 minutes and 40 seconds. With only 17 miles left, he hauled back hard. The MiG-29 pitched up at 35 to 40 degrees, climbing to 6,500 feet within seconds. This pop-up was essential. The higher and faster the release, the farther the GBU-39s would glide, the more stable their trajectory, the deadlier their precision. On the HUD, red letters flashed. Release point, in range. The mission computer locked the target coordinates, syncing GPS and INS. On the weapons panel, Milo's hands moved fast. Mode, precise coordinate. Fuse, instant impact. Release, single. He glanced at the HUD. Target coordinates glowed clear. Estimated error, plus or minus 2 feet. Almost perfect. Milo gripped the stick firmly, thumb resting on the release button. One deep inhale. Then, 3 seconds later, both GBU-39s dropped in sequence from their pylons. As they separated, diamond-shaped folding fins snapped open, transforming them into aerodynamic gliders. Their INS GPS guidance held them steady, with target data from the LEA already on board, ensuring a CEP of less than or equal to 3 feet. The MiG-29 pushed down, diving back to 165 feet, racing low to escape Russian radar and missile coverage. The jet's role was done. From here, everything depended on the bombs. The GBU-39s glided at nearly Mach 0.9, descending toward the outskirts of Kherson. Their target, the exact coordinates of a two-story house, Russia's improvised UAV command post. Unlike unguided gravity bombs, the GBU-39 could fly. Its INS kept its trajectory even under GPS jamming. The diamond wings are constantly trimmed against gusts, adjusting by a few degrees at a time. Every millisecond, its processor recalculated speed, angle, altitude, and pressure, keeping deviation within 1 meter at 10 minutes and 12 seconds. At less than 1 mile from the target, the Leia-100 zoomed in. The bomb dove at a 40-degree angle, closing in at nearly Mach 0.9. The two-story house filled the frame. Inside, Russian operators hunched over laptops, preparing UAV launch orders. They had no idea death was less than 10 seconds away. 2 seconds later, the GBU-39 switched to terminal guidance mode. A blinding flash tore across the image. A thunderous explosion followed. One bomb punched through the wall, its instantaneous fuse detonating on impact. The building erupted. Fire and smoke shot skyward in a column hundreds of feet high. The shockwave rattled the Leica's camera, shaking its feed violently. Seconds later, the structure was gone, flattened into rubble. The antenna lay twisted. Laptops and crates were hurled dozens of yards away. Around 20 Russian personnel, UAV controllers, technicians, and officers were wiped out instantly. None survived. At 12:12, the Leica banked overhead, transmitting confirmation. Hit confirmed. Target destroyed. On the command map, a red X marked the coordinates. The consequences came immediately. At least 3 Russian UAV strikes were cancelled on the spot. Artillery fire went blind without drones for spotting. One battery exposed itself and was destroyed by HIMARS. Russian special forces lost their eyes in the sky. Ambushes and raids were delayed or aborted. Logistics convoys halted. Without UAV cover, they were forced to wait until nightfall, disrupting supply lines to the front. One single strike had triggered a chain reaction, crippled firepower, disrupted logistics, and paralyzed reconnaissance. For Ukraine, the effect was immediate. Supply convoys moved more safely. Ammunition depots near the front no longer live under a suicide drone threat. Artillery could maneuver and fire without constant fear of detection. News of the raid spread rapidly on Russian telegram channels. UAV footage of a MiG-29 dropping GBU-39s in broad daylight and hitting with pinpoint accuracy went viral. This was more than the destruction of a command post. It was the planting of fear inside Russia's ranks. Russian soldiers now understood that any house they entered, no matter the camouflage, no matter the neighborhood, could already be pinned by a Ukrainian UAV. One signal, one GBU-39, was enough to turn a shelter into rubble. In response, the Russian command in Kherson issued urgent directives. UAV control posts must not remain fixed for longer than 30 minutes. Antennas must be camouflaged with netting or placed underground. Control crews must split and move constantly, never clustering in one building. But these measures carried their own price. Constant moves disrupted signals. Camouflaged antennas weakened transmissions. Splitting crews made coordination harder. At 12:20, the MiG-29 touched down safely on its forward strip. The entire mission lasted just 21 minutes from takeoff to landing. One command post erased, one UAV team annihilated, an entire drone network paralyzed. In the Ukrainian command room, there was no need for speeches. Just a single short line in the report. 2 GBU-39s, one target, complete success. The Kherson airstrike was not a massive battle. No hundreds of missiles, no tank columns, no artillery storms lighting up the sky. Just a solitary sortie. And yet, in that smallness lay the essence of modern war. Sometimes one precise and unexpected strike is enough to shift the balance.